Okay, so I did my presentation on Yerevan, Armenia, which is where my grandparents come from. So Yerevan has a BSK Köppen classification, which basically just means it is pretty dry and cold. The nice thing about Yerevan is it's almost exactly like Denver. So we're going to see as I go through, there's a lot of kind of things that are very close to Denver. It does get less rainfall than Denver. Denver gets about 15 inches. Yerevan gets 10.8. A very similar latitude, 40.2 versus 39 point something for Denver. So high temperature, average high temperature in July is 91. Here in Denver, it's about 90. You can see they get very little rainfall in the summer. The winters are really cold. 17 degrees Fahrenheit is the average temperature, and they get about 40 inches of snowfall versus Denver gets about 60 inches. It's pretty dry and sunny, just like it is in Denver. Okay. Um, Weather extremes, they don't really have a lot of cool weather extremes. They do get the rare tornado. The thing they mainly do get sometimes is they get thunderstorms, and those thunderstorms can lead to like flash floods. But for the most part, they don't really have really exciting weather. Highest temperature is very similar to Denver. Denver was 106 as well. And the coldest temperature, not quite as cold as Denver, but fairly close. The latitude, like I said before, very similar to Denver. Again, the further you go from the equator, the larger range in temperature you're going to have. Yerevan's angle ranges from 73 to 27, and their hours of daylight range from 15 and a half to 10. So this 15 and a half hours is at the highest angle. This 27 degrees is at the shortest amount of time, which is why there is such a large range of temperature in Yerevan. Their elevation, not quite as high as Denver, about 2,800 feet, but you can see that there is a range that on the outskirts of the city, it goes up almost to the mile high that we are at. But topography and elevation will play a role in Yerevan's temperatures. They're a little bit cooler than they otherwise would be if they were down lower. The topography, you can see Yerevan is right there. Armenia is a pretty mountainous region. They are surrounded by mountains, and you can see they're also surrounded by water. We'll get to that in a minute, but they are right there, surrounded by mountains, and Yerevan is like right on the foothills, if you will, of this mountain range here. Let's see. Proximity to water, they are surrounded by three seas. They've got the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea is a little bit further over. However, because they are surrounded by mountains, water does not really affect their temperature. So usually water has a moderating effect on temperature, but because Yerevan is very mountainous, it's pretty much cut off from the influence of water. Ocean currents, again, same kind of thing. You can see there are no ocean currents anywhere close to Yerevan, so there is really no effect. And even over here, we're not really close to the ocean currents either, but there's an El Nino La Nina cycle, which Yerevan does not get. So again, that doesn't really affect it either. So ocean currents do not play a major role on their climate. Prevailing winds do play somewhat of a role. You can see that there is for the most part, it's either out of the east or the west. So they do get that kind of a monsoon. But again, because they are surrounded by mountains, the influence is minimal because it doesn't matter which direction the wind is coming from. They are always on the leeward side of the mountain. So they are basically in a rain shadow. The most important temperature controls, then, like everybody, is going to be latitude, but also their elevation and then their topography. So, again, they are on the leeward side of mountains, meaning that they are going to dry out as the wind comes over the mountain and sinks down. Because of their latitude, there is a big range in the sun's rays, the amount of sun's rays, and the angle of the sun's rays. And then the topography, this is Mount Ararat in the distance, blocks off a lot of that precipitation that they otherwise would get. And those are going to be the three biggest temperature influences. Climate change might seem like, well, it's already a dry place and it's already kind of warm in the summer and cold in the winter, so there's not going to be much effect. But you never know what effect climate is going to have. And one of the big things is mosquito-borne illness in areas that are generally dry. If climate change does increase the amount of rainfall an area would get, that could increase the number of like mosquitoes and therefore mosquito-borne illness. It could affect the vegetation in the area. So we don't exactly know what effect it would have, but it could lead to an increase or a decrease in precipitation. Really don't know what effect that might have. And then that could affect agriculture and the ability of Armenia to feed its people. And then here are my sources, and I would be done. I hit